So Joanna, before we jump into what I know is going to be a really juicy topic, I wonder if you can share just a tiny little bit about how you got into doing this wonderful work that you do in the world.
Absolutely, I'd love to. And the bottom line is I would never have imagined, not in a million years would I have imagined that this is where the divine life would bring me. And the truth is, it started in the heart of the women's movement in the 70s, growing up with that influence of who are women supposed to be? How are we supposed to show up? What makes us a good woman? And at the same time, also being the first divorced family on the block. And so being part of that divorce movement and all kinds of judgments about men, about love, about myself, my own worthiness. And so all of this conditioning set me up to be really successful in the corporate world, to marry 6'3", blonde hair, blue-eyed, concert pianist, par golfer, valedictorian, Prince Charming when I was 22 and we were divorced less than 4 years later. I got an electrical engineering degree so that I could do whatever I wanted to do in the world and never depend on a man. Oh, by the way, that had an impact on why my marriage broke up. And yet I was promoted and I was making this beautiful income and I looked like I had this life and I was miserable. Why am I divorced? Why can't I have an orgasm? What is wrong with all the men? Why do I keep meeting these men who won't go deep with me? Why do I keep meeting the sexually inhibited men? Notice I keep emphasizing the men.
Yep.
It was never them. It was me. And sure, the ones that I attracted had their own things to work through, but they were a reflection of what was going on here. And it was truly the wake-up call to what I now know to be the divine feminine, what I now know to be the feminine that so many women, and it doesn't matter the age range at this point, I see it from the 20s to the 80s, what we've been conditioned to think we have to be. And that wake-up call for me, when I really got what does masculine and feminine mean, everything changed. Literally everything changed. And within a year, I left my Houston, Texas good old boy network, engineering and IT job, and made a commitment to serve women so they didn't have to go through the pain that I went through, and to serve men so that they didn't have to go through the pain that I put men through, because I had such blame and such judgment of them and honestly of me, that there was no possibility of having real love. And so that was 17 years ago now. And I've been on this path to really bring intimacy, authenticity, sexuality, and love and unite them in a way that creates truly ecstatic living. From the bedroom to the boardroom and everywhere in between.
That's really beautiful, Joanna. And I really appreciate you sharing some of your journey with us and some of the reason that you got into this work and what led you in on this path. And I really know that this is going to be a really important conversation for this event, because I know this audience, I know the audience out there, and I know that there are so many women that are listening right now that are going to really relate to aspects or maybe even all of your journey that you're talking about here. I know that there are many women who have had the successful career but have not had the success or the joy or the happiness or satisfaction that they desire in other aspects of their life, specifically love. And I was one of them, because I was in the same situation or a similar situation where I was rocking it out in the corporate world, and yet I was not having what I wanted to have in my own personal life and love life, until I had some transformational experiences as well, and ultimately met and married my amazing husband and became a first-time bride at age 43.
Awesome.
Yep. So I can relate to a lot of what you were saying there. And it is so interesting how we can feel so much we can feel so much satisfaction and excitement and joy about our career, and yet have so much lacking at the same time in other aspects of our lives, because a lot of women are really proud of the success that they've had in their careers, and that's a valid thing. That's a valid path. I felt joy and success in that for a period of time, and yet there was this other aspect of my life that was so lacking and so missing. And I felt a deep dissatisfaction in that area of life.
Well, and it's interesting because what I find, and this was true for me, is that on one level, it fed my professional life. And just to add a different perspective, it fed my ego. It fed my insecurity. It got me to go, I'm good. People see me. I'm successful. And it wasn't that I didn't also on some level enjoy it, but when I really looked at it, it was a way for me to continue to keep proving myself. And when I was really honest, like I remember times when I worked in, obviously here in the States, but I had colleagues in the UK, and they'd be going into the office and I'd still be on my laptop in my bed. And it was like at that point in time, the only thing that was more intimate with my bed than me was my laptop. And so there was really a misbalance in that, because I really had this programming of what does it take to be successful and what does it take to be strong? And oh, by the way, that last boss called me a bully. He's like, and I'm like, what? I couldn't see it because it was so not who I was. But in part of, particularly, this was the 90s in Houston, Texas. And I was proud of trying to outman the men. And I was good at it, but I was still truly empty. It wasn't fulfilling me. And I longed to have that intimate conversation. And I longed to be asked out on the date. And I longed to be able to soften and relax and feel like somebody had my back. So yes, there was a part, and I see this over and over and over again. Doesn't matter what the field is. There can be some level of reward and knowing that I'm in service and I'm recognized. And that invitation to say, does it truly make you happy? And is it enlivening you? Because what I also see is that so many women are exhausted in that.
Yeah.
And all of this ties together with our sensuality, our sexuality, our attractiveness, talking about being captivating. Like every one of those pieces is part of the recipe of what has me feel sexy, attractive, confident that I know if I'm going out and I want to look for that date, that I might well get noticed. It reminds me of a time when you're really on. There was a night many years ago, but I'd gone through a breakup, done my work, that there's some very specific things that after a relationship ends that we want to do. But I did that. And I was like, oh, the next day I woke up and I was in this great space, and 6 men. I went to an event that night and 6 men were like, hey, can I take you out? Or I want to talk more. And I was like, wow, okay, this, that radiance, that light really works when we're in that space.
Yeah. So there were so many little gems in what you just said there, Joanna, but I want to put the exclamation point on just a couple of them. One is that I was very struck by what you said about the proving. And if a woman's career is centered in the proving, or some feeling inside that I'm not enough, and so I have to keep pushing and overachieving and that sort of thing, that's, I think, a common phenomenon that happens, and I think that's worth highlighting. And then the other thing that struck me was you were successful, and you said you were good at outmanning the men. And there was a part of you that was proud of that, but inside there was like this feeling of dissatisfaction or emptiness inside. And I think that's something that is really important for us to pay attention to. And I know, at least for me, I felt that sometimes, but I noticed that back when I was going through all of this, I would often just suppress that. Like I wasn't paying attention or tuning in for a period of time to what was really going on in my body. So I, like you, I could outman the men in certain aspects and at certain times of my career. But, and I did feel a certain amount of pride around that. Maybe it's ego-based like you're talking about, but I wasn't tuning into my body during that time. I wasn't tuning into those feelings. A lot of times I would just suppress them. And then I can remember at times like this emotion would like suddenly bubble up to the surface. And I would realize how deeply I did desire that love, passion, intimacy, closeness, and how deeply I really did desire to have that connection with a man in my life that I hadn't had to that point.
Oh, so much so. I certainly, until I started to see the other side, I wasn't aware of how much those feelings were actually percolating all the time. And I ended up spending time in feeling overwhelmed or frustrated or not enough or, oh, I'll get the juice off this next project. Cause sometimes I could I'm like, oh, and I get into it and I get excited. But all of that, staying busy, the juice, there was so much suppression that I had no idea. And I remember like I would cry myself to sleep at night. I would call friends and be like, oh, my life, my love life, this man, I want sex. And yet it was only the sadness that I could really touch. And it was only late at night. And yet there were so many feelings that as I began this journey and oh my gosh, feelings and emotions are such a scary topic for most people. And on so many levels they were for me too. It's like, but yet they're the barometers of our soul. When we can stop and actually get in touch, our being and our body knows the truth. Mm-hmm. And those emotions and the sensations and even the tiredness that can come or the frustration or the hurt, every one of those things will point us to the truth if we're willing to stop and feel. And that can be hugely scary. And yet we take it one step at a time. What's this guidance? What's this inspiration? What's this moment offering me that will actually show me where the magic and the miracles and the, oh my God, did that just happen? experiences can be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, when you talked about the word exhaustion, that stood out for me because I think exhaustion is a pretty common phenomenon in our world, in our society today. And I think that exhaustion is our body. It's definitely a message and a cue from our body that something's out of balance or something needs to change. And I think if there are women out there listening right now who are like thinking, oh, I'm so exhausted, I can hardly stay awake or whatever for this, might be a real cue. Don't you think?
Oh, 10,000%. Any kind of feeling of exhaustion, inadequacy, hopelessness, not enough time. What are some of the other ones that I hear so commonly? Those are the biggies. But it also, like my pattern of thinking that I'm just not meeting the right men, or if I just keep trying, like all of those are really powerful indicators that there's an opportunity. Not that there's anything wrong, but that there's a really big, enormous even opportunity to experience what truly, I've had so many clients say, I couldn't even imagine that it could be like this. And that's the truth here. I had no idea what feminine actually felt like. I had no idea what receiving really felt like. And it just keeps getting better and better all the time. And so, yes, those are all beautiful indications. And we can get back that juice. We can get back that radiance. We can get back the excitement and the knowing, not just the hope, but the knowing that extraordinary love is awaiting us.
Mm-hmm. That was really beautiful, the way that you said that. And I love that you said that this is a signal that there's an opportunity and a new possibility. And I like framing it that way. And I think that's very hopeful, especially if you are in that state of exhaustion. So a couple of other things you said stood out to me that I want to ask you about. You said, I didn't really know what it felt like to feel feminine or to know how to receive. So for women that can relate to that, what can you share around that as like an entryway or just a little piece of guidance that can help support the women listening?
Yeah. So, oh, it's such a big question, and I do retreats and like long programs, and let's take a couple of bite-sized chunks. And the first piece that wants to come back is where we were talking about the emotional body. So emotion is definitely expression of the feminine. And it's okay if we don't feel. Closely tied to our emotional body is our sensational body, and so the sensations that we feel in our physical body. And so whether we're talking about the frustration or the distrust or the intuitive gut hit, or we're talking about the exquisite pleasures of sexuality, our bodies and the ability to pay attention to the sensations that are in our bodies are really one of the gateways into our femininity. And so when I work with people on that deeper dive of how do we unmask, how do we reveal that feminine essence, there's two things that are the fundamental pieces. And that is, oh my gosh, I have a body. Oh my gosh, I'm important. Oh my gosh, I need to be on the priority list. Oh my gosh, I need to actually know what I want and what I desire and what turns me on and what turns me off and what my yes and my no are. Like, the first step is I got to come back and have a relationship here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that the feminine is really conditioned, and actually female bodies, because of being the caretakers and the mothers, there is an aspect of us that is programmed to self-sacrifice. And we actually can't give the gifts no matter where we're giving them, as mom, as community, as a professional, as a friend, as a lover. Like, we can't really give those contributions fully, which also is where we get our satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
We receive through giving, but that we can't actually give that fully unless we're in a relationship with ourselves. There was a 40-year marriage therapist that wrote an article that said the number one destroyer of intimate relationships is self-abandonment. That it's not the problems in the relationship. It is not them. It is the place where we abandon ourselves. And if we abandon ourselves, if we are at the bottom of the priority list, if we don't express our needs, if we don't express our desires, if we can't feel the sensations and the feelings that are so much a part of our feminine guidance system, we actually can't show up fully in that relationship. We pretend to be something, or we pretend that we don't have needs. Because we do. We have big needs. And at least in heterosexual relationships, the men want to meet our needs. Right. They want to make us happy. They want us to be fulfilled, but we don't know enough of what we want. And then we are so often conditioned not to express it, and we don't believe that they're actually there for us. So all of these dynamics are playing in. And so I got to be with me. My guideposts are my emotions and my sensations. And then to recognize that people actually do, and our men and our dates and the man on the airplane or in the parking lot at the grocery store that says, can I lift that for you? Like, they want us to receive. And we are talking about, I'll be specific, we are talking about women who are feminine and men who are masculine in this case. Same-sex relationships, the same energies apply. It's just that and no matter where we are, we want to identify what that primary energy is within us, so that we can be in alignment with that and have this true sexual, sensual love dance of attraction. And that's where the receptivity of the feminine comes in as well. So I gave you lots of pieces to your question, but it's this relationship with self, bottom line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that most women's giving muscles are very, very well developed. Our receptivity abilities and muscles, if you will, are often not so well developed. And so one of the things that I think and I agree with you, I think men do want to please us. They don't always know what we want. They're not mind readers. And so that's why it's important for us to be in touch with our own needs and to be able to ask in a way that a man has a chance to respond, to give him that chance to respond, but then to be able to receive it. Otherwise, it's like trying to pour a gallon of water into a 1-cup container. There's no capacity to receive it, to take it in, and we'll sabotage those opportunities to receive.
Yeah, and so often we get frustrated with the men because we think they're not there for us. And if we really knew the truth, they are so there for us. They are so there for us. And it doesn't mean that every relationship is perfect. And it doesn't mean that the men don't have their work too. But when we get down to soul meeting, and that's really where I work with people, is on that soul level. When we get to that, their souls are so committed to seeing the beauty and the joy in ours. And if they don't have any place to contribute, if there's no place to receive, they will move on. They will absolutely move on, because part of what is their juice is to be able to make a contribution. And if we walk around saying, I don't need anything, and it's not about being needy, but it is about having the capacity to be served, to be cared for, to be make happyable.
Exactly.
Be receptive. All of those pieces create a space for this dance of the masculine that wants to give, that wants to provide, that wants to lead, that wants to penetrate. And then the ability to flow and receive and surrender and have the pleasure of that, the joy of that, oh my God, this is so amazing. And it's so available. But believe me, I couldn't get to, oh my God, it's so amazing. I couldn't even imagine, oh my God, it's so amazing, until I started taking those steps.
Mm-hmm.
And then it gets better and better all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as you were speaking, I thought of something that I've shared before. So some people in the audience will remember me sharing this, but there are new people here as well. When I met my husband, he had recently dated this woman that I knew kind of through friends. I didn't know her well personally, but she was an incredible woman, incredibly accomplished, incredibly educated. She's the kind that would send out the holiday cards, and she would say, in January I ran a marathon, in February I opened a school for the blind. I mean, it was like, seriously, like
Wow.
huge accomplishments every single month. It would make you exhausted just to read it, let alone do it, right? But she was truly an amazing and incredible woman. And as things started to, get a little bit more serious with my husband, I just wanted to ask him the question as to what caused that to not work out, because I thought, I think I'm a pretty amazing woman, but I'm not doing what she's doing.
If we were going to compare, yes.
Right.
We shouldn't do. And tell me about this.
Right. And so I just said, I'm just curious, because everything I know about her is so impressive, and she's such an incredible and lovely woman. And I'm just curious as to why things didn't work out, because my understanding through the grapevine was that he was the one that had ended it. And he said, oh, you're right. She's amazing. She's beautiful. She's incredible. And I was so enamored and impressed with her. I just couldn't see where I could really fit or make any sort of difference in her life. That's exactly what he said to me.
Yes, I couldn't see where I could make a difference in her life. The masculine wants to make our lives extraordinary. And there was no room for him. Mm-hmm. And my guess is, I know a lot of women, maybe not quite that many stories, but a lot of women that are so powerful, can accomplish and do so much. And that's amazing. I celebrate it. And what I also know is that many of those women are really longing, if they're willing to let you know what goes on behind the scenes, how sad they really are, how lonely they really are. And if you gave them the permission, they'd say, well, if you could really have someone show up for you, to cherish you, to hold you, to listen, to value all of these pieces of you, would you like that? Well, absolutely, I'd like that. I would love that. But nobody's going to be there for me. They don't show up for me, because there's also a belief system that says they don't show up for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so the beautiful part is all of that belief system structure can be shifted. But if we believe that it doesn't work for me, or that I can't trust, or they won't really be there when it matters, that's exactly what we'll experience. And so I have deep compassion for her and for the women that I work with like that, because it takes courage to actually come to a place where we're willing to be vulnerable, willing to be seen, willing to admit that we have a need. Go back years, my programming around needs was that needs were weak and pathetic. Weak and pathetic. And I would not admit that I had a need. And here the men are wanting to serve my needs. But right. I am bound and determined I am not going to have a need. Because he's not going to want me if I have a need. And it's going to mean, go back to I'm proving something. It's going to mean that I'm not good, that I'm somehow weak or less than. And so there's so much false conditioning about the feminine that keeps us from having the extraordinary connections and magic that's truly available when the masculine and feminine unite.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us have had that programming, and we have to make that distinction between needs and being needy, because there is that distinction. I think being in touch with our needs, I think that a lot of us have been programmed in that way, to suppress our needs or deny our needs or pretend we don't have them. And I think there's this key distinction between having needs and being needy. And we confuse that sometimes in our mind, whereas being in touch with our needs is actually a part of being feminine, being able to be in tune with them, being able to express them, being able to ask for the support where we desire it, and give a man an opportunity to provide that. That's a whole different thing than being needy, right? Being like a damsel in distress all the time and being needy. And I think that's a distinction sometimes we don't make as women.
It's such an important distinction. I just can't even begin to say enough how much that plays into the idea of I'm supposed to be the caretaker, I'm supposed to be the giver, I need to be there for you. And on top of that, then this idea that somehow having a need is needy. And so we get this really mixed up set of beliefs and habits that truly limit us from having all the pleasures of the spark of attraction, to the enjoyment of being cooked in a meal, or the enjoyment of let me pleasure your body. Because men are actually turned on by our turn on. It's not about I did this so you do that, which is so often I'm like, he's been there long enough, it's time for his turn, and we're trying to keep track of what we give and what we receive. And truly a masculine man, when we're talking about sexuality, loves, is aroused, is turned on by our ability to receive. And he doesn't care if we're keeping score. He's much less concerned about what we're doing than what we're receiving. So our ability to truly allow pleasure in our bodies is another aspect of receiving that truly allows the ecstasy of this path of soul love.
Yes, and I think what you're teaching here, Joanna, extends even beyond the bedroom.
Oh,
I think men, what we sometimes forget as women is how satisfying it is for a man to be able to provide something, whether it's pleasure in bed, whether it's pleasuring a woman's body, or whether it's giving to her in another way. When we're able to graciously receive that, they get that satisfaction of feeling their masculine energy by having provided something and being appreciated and acknowledged for it. That's what I mean by graciously receiving. We're not only receiving, but we're acknowledging and appreciating the things that they do provide for us, even those things that we could provide or do for ourselves. We're allowing them, we're receiving them, and their gifts, what they have to offer.
absolutely. I will often say the mantra of the modern day woman is, no, no, I got it.
Yep.
The mantra of the happy woman, thank you. Thank you. It's amazing when we'll say thank you instead of no, no, I got it.
Mm-hmm.
It's huge.
Yeah, and I always say to women, wherever possible, say yes to whatever a man is offering you. You know, as long as it's not against your, it's not immoral, illegal, or whatever, say yes.
Yeah. And this is that place of one of the first places I will go with on this journey of soul love with a woman is to find that truth, to be able to trust yourself enough to know what your yes is and what your no is. And absolutely, most women need encouragement to say yes.
Mm-hmm.
But part of the reason they struggle to say yes is because they don't actually have full access to their no.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't have an authentic yes without an authentic no.
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many women, I'll go back to sexuality and intimacy, but that desire for love. There's a huge percentage of women that have gone along with sexual loving in whatever way that might express at times when it really wasn't truly a yes.
Mm-hmm.
They thought that if I do this, I'll get the love, the connection, the intimacy that I want. Or I want him to like me. I was absolutely a queen of this. And so I didn't have access to my true yes or my true no. So I didn't trust myself. And so it's actually to receive means that I actually have to trust myself to say yes or no.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, I'm going to come back to this relationship with self. The strength of the relationship with you determines, limits, or opens up the strength of a relationship with another. How strong this relationship with you is how strong the relationship with another can actually be. And that means telling the truth when maybe we think they're not going to like it.
Mm-hmm.
It's expressing what our long-term desires are, even if we think they'll run. And if they don't match and they're going to run, let them run.
Mm-hmm.
It's, I can trust me to let you see me. I can trust me to say yes. I can trust me to say no. And therefore, I can trust you. It's not that I need to trust you. It's that I need to trust me. Mm-hmm. Then trusting you is easy because I know I got me. And oh, by the way, the divine has me too.
So, Joanna, I'm really, really thrilled with this conversation. I feel like we've touched on some really, really important things, and I think it's going to really help a lot of people out there. So I really want to thank you for your generosity and sharing your wisdom and experience today.
Oh, you're so, so welcome. It is my heartfelt honor to really support this dynamic and beautiful path of loving. Thank you.
Thank you. And for all of you that are watching or listening, we also want to thank you for your presence here, because we know the fact that you're here speaks to the person that you are, and that you are a person who is committed to your own self-development, growth, and excellence in love and life. And we're sending you lots of love and blessings. Take care, and bye-bye for now.